With the mic.
Hope, but also pain because so many people close to me were murdered and died, and we forget that as we go about our lives. You know, I get up and I live on a farm and listen to the roosters. You can't hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. I mean, I can shout, and I don't need a microphone, but I'll cope with this. So it's painful. Unfortunately, a lot of the history has been shoved to the side and forgotten it. And I was yesterday talking with one of the brothers from the party, Chip, has been in the penitentiary for 50 years. And in California, he's asking people to sign petitions. He's had strokes. He's old, 50 damn years. And you know, people struggle and people forget that people are paying the price still now. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention.
Denise Oliver-Velez is a legend, living legend. She was one of the founding members of the Young Lords in New York, a member of the Black Panther Party. I assume you met or had communication with many of the people who were in this film?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most recently, she has been an adjunct professor at SUNY New Paltz.
That was my retirement.
Yeah. Teaching anthropology and women's studies. And she is currently an editor at Daily Cause. Contributing editor at Daily Cause. And a very popular speaker all over the place. If you are interested in more, this is what I did for my research. Go to YouTube. Find everything on YouTube now. They're not charging us for it yet, thank God. Houston, North Carolina, and many, many other places. I'm curious, where did you grow up?
I was born in Brooklyn. My second language was Yiddish. No, I'm serious. I call my grandmother Bobby and my grandfather Jaja because my grandfather was the Shabbos Goy.
Oh, turn on the lights. Turn them on.
Yeah, my grandparents came to New York from Chicago. My father was born in Chicago.
Where in Brooklyn?
Crown Heights.
Oh, okay. And where did
Well, Crown Heights was all Hasidim then.
Uh-huh.
It has changed significantly at this point. But people, when they say, I was born in Brooklyn Jewish Hospital.
So that was
Somebody else was here too? A lot of people get out. Okay, Brooklyn's in the house.
That was Williamsburg before Williamsburg, huh?
No, it wasn't. It was very, very different. And then all of my parents, a lot of my parents' closest friends were Jewish, but they were secular because my dad was a fellow traveler, and I grew up surrounded by boring communists.
That was my next question, your parents' political perspectives.
Yeah, but you know, who wants to be like your parents? And Paul Robeson sang happy birthday to me when I was like 6 years old. I was surrounded by, you know, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Theodore, all those kind of people. But I thought anybody who sat around and got into long, intense discussions of Menschewitz and this and that and bullshit, whatever, boring. Like I said, wanted to be out doing things, and all of the sort of Marxist Leninist left were very intellectual, but they weren't getting their heads busted, at least not at that time. Prior to that, yes, but you know, so each generation kind of looks at your parents and you take it a step further, hopefully, unless you're reactionary and take it backwards. So that was my start.
how did you become introduced to and involved with the Young Lords? Oh, let me back that up. Was that your first political involvement?
No.
Okay, what was the
My first political involvement was in the 3rd grade when I refused to get under the desk because the Russians were going to bomb us. And they gave us dog tags and they said, "That's so we'll be able to identify your ashes." So me and Amy Weisberger and Janie Waxelbaum, because their parents were leftists too, so the 3 of us refused to get under the desk.
For those of you who are under 40, once upon a time, there was this idea that this country called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was going to drop an A-bomb on us. And there was this political military doctrine called MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. And there were drills. I'll never forget when.
Get under your desk. Like that's gonna really do something.
Well, we were. My wife and I went to the same elementary school, and I think we were in junior high school then in Rowan, and this was during the Kennedy administration, and there was this threat of war. Was it around the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And I'll never forget our principal told us, Mr. Ian Jackson, okay, you all are going to go home now, and if you see some bombs falling, jump in a ditch. And even then, I thought that was kind of like, what?
We were all, there was Bertrand Russell, Dan the Bomb, SANE and CNVA. There were different organizations that people, and then at the same time, I was in first my NACP youth group, because we sat in at Rochdale Village in Queens, and then CORE, and then I went to work for Harlem Act.
Harlem Youth Organization, yeah.
And then I was at the Truth Coffee Shop at the time that the Black Arts Movement was starting, and in fact, Malcolm X actually stopped me from getting shot. He literally stepped in front of a gun for me in the coffee shop. I didn't know he was Malcolm X. He was this nice man that I used to serve tea to. He used to play chess in the corner with this brother named Chaka Zulu, who was a martial artist. And so after this man jumped in front of this crazy nationalist who was gonna shoot me, I went and I peed on myself. You know, somebody stick a gun in your face, you pee on yourself.
Yeah, but why was he aiming at you?
Because he said half-breed bitches could get out of Harlem.
Oh, he was crazy.
And yeah, and I was like, what? And I was like, I'm black. But he wasn't. This was during the time that everybody was measuring blackness.
Speaking of outside, when I first met her, I said, "Is the pronunciation of your name? How do I pronounce it?" Yeah, right. Yeah, and she said, "No. I'm black."
I said Oliver.
Oliver, not Olivier, not Velez, just Oliver-Velez. Okay, fine. And you have no Hispanic heritage.
Ni un chipitín de sangre boricua ni nada.
But you
that
were.
Means I don't have one drop of Puerto Rican blood or whatever. My ancestry is African American, out of slavery, but my grandmother is white bread Kansas, who married my grandfather in 1915. They had to leave Kansas. That's how they wound up in Chicago. And my dad was a Tuskegee Airman.
Absolutely. So, and the reason people think you are Hispanic is because of the Young Lords, which was a predominantly Puerto Rican organization.
A third of the Young Lords were African American.
Oh, really?
And most people don't recognize that, but if you know Harlem, you know that dividing line that supposedly says, Fifth Avenue is like one side is Barfield, East Harlem, the other is West Harlem, Central Harlem, and West. But you had a lot of black people there. So my cousin Jean lived in Carver Projects, and so I used to hang out, and that's on 106th Street, and I used to hang out there. Also, if you grew up during the 60s, one of the occupations, if you were in the 70s, you were going to not just discotheques, but you were going out dancing salsa. So black kids and Jewish kids and Italian kids and white kids and Puerto Ricans and Cubans went to the Chez Jose and the Corso and whatever, and yes, and the Palladium started it.
Where'd you go to high school?
The High School of Music and Arts.
And what in your
Very leftist high school.
in your mind at the time, if someone asked you, what do you want to do when you leave school? What would have been your answer?
I wanted to be an archaeologist, but the profession at that time was really biased, and so women really couldn't go anywhere in archaeology unless you were Iris Love, whose husband was a millionaire. And so I wound up first studying art history, and I went to Hunter for a year, but I had the experience of meeting and spending a day with Fannie Lou Hamer, and that kind of turned my life around. I decided I wanted to leave Hunter and go to a black school, so I transferred to Howard, and was at Howard for a period of time, but then ran into Rap Brown, and then ended up sort of getting kicked out of school. And then I went back to Howard. We took over the campus because we wanted a real black president at Howard rather than who was there. Yeah.
Wow. Well, anyway,
But while I was at
Yeah.
Howard, there was a Puerto Rican brother named Harry Quintana in the architecture school, and he said to me, Denise, there's these Puerto Ricans coming to campus for a meeting with me, and you're the only person I know who knows anything about Puerto Ricans. Could you put some of them up at your apartment? And they were from a former gang on the Lower East Side called the Assassins, who became the Real Great Society, like an anti-poverty organization. So 3 of them stayed in my apartment, and they freaked out when they walked in because they said, "What's that up by the door?" And I said, "It's a shotgun. What's it look like to you?" And they were like, "Shotgun." Well, you know, the machismo, the idea of a woman with a gun, you know, it was like really weird. And they said, "Why do you have that?" I said, "To shoot rats." Because they don't pick up, they don't pick up garbage in DC. So he went outside and let go pellets and ran the rats away so you could put garbage in the garbage. Because they used to sit on top of the cans and look at you like,
Yeah.
we scared.
So, that was getting us to your introduction to the young lords.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. By way of the rats.
Yeah. So they were like very impressed, and they said, if you come back to New York, we got a job for you ever. So I ended up going back to New York, and I showed up on the Lower East Side where they were, and they gave me a job to teach in a prep school they were opening for high school dropouts in East Harlem. So I moved up to East Harlem. They were renovating buildings, and that was where we had the first meetings of what was called the Sociedad de Aviso Campos, and I was teaching at the prep school. And this dude from the Peace Corps, Harris Wofford, who later became showed up. They were looking they were gonna establish this experimental college on Long Island called SUNY Old Westbury. And they were, at that time, they were only gonna be 95 students, and they had already recruited some people kicked out of school in Madison, Wisconsin, SDS people and whatever. And they had gotten some black folks, so they wanted Puerto Ricans. So they showed up to recruit Puerto Ricans to be out at Old Westbury. So they recruited my significant other I was living with, who was a Puerto Rican poet, and me. I called up my mother and I said, Mom, they want me to go to the school, Old Westbury, and they're gonna pay everything and give us a stipend, and I'm not gonna have, and I said, but I didn't tell them I wasn't Puerto Rican. My mother said, shut up. And so I wound up, there were 95 students the first year, and there were 16 students who were, I hate the term not white because that centers whiteness, but there were 16 of us. And we couldn't have a black caucus or a Puerto Rican caucus or an Asian caucus, so we formed a non-white caucus on campus. And in fact, we ended up taking over the school and shutting it down because they were firing a communist Italian professor who taught black studies.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that was your second campus takeover?
yes.
Yes, okay.
And
You
my
see a
mother-
trend here.
My mother used to say to me, are you ever gonna graduate from school? Would you please stop taking over campuses? So,
Oh, so you went there as a student?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
They
No,
took us out
okay,
there
as a
to be students. So what ended up happening was, we recruited some more students, so we had more students of color. We got one kid from Bronx Science High School. His name was Paulie Guzman, and he later became Pablo Yoruba Guzman. You know? And we recruited out to come out to the campus. The one Puerto Rican involved in the Columbia takeover, the strike at Columbia University, and that was Juan Gonzalez, who you all probably see on Democracy Now! As the co-host, and he wrote for the Times.
Yeah.
We recruited a Sikh program student, that was the, EOP in those days, whose name was Felipe Luciano. He was at Queens College, and they came out there, and that was the original sort of formation. They came onto campus with Pablo and a brother from Long Island named Bob Bunkley, who became Muntu, had gone by the Panther office, and they came back with this paper and said they had an article about Cha-Cha and whatever in Chicago. So we all sat around and said, oh, we want to go out and meet this guy. And they had this raggedy car, and there were women in the group too. There were a number of us sisters. And we said, we're not getting in that car with you. You're crazy. That's raggedy. It's never going to make it to Chicago. So I get into arguments with people because they said, well, it was only men who went to Chicago and the men were the founders. No, we were smart. We didn't ride in the car. But we were there from the very beginning. There were women in the organization. It gets reported kind of wrong.
So the Young Lords in Chicago was already in operation?
The YLO was already in operation, and so they all went out there, and so Cha-Cha kind of waved him at Juan and said, I make you the East Coast Young Lords organization. And they came back and said, we're Young Lords now. Because people say to me, how did you join the Young Lords? I said, it joined us. I mean, it was sort of organic.
Yeah. Now, let me just interject here. I have worked with Pablo Guzman.
Okay.
And Felipe Luciano.
Okay.
As we were reporters. I worked Pablo worked initially, he wrote for the Daily News along with Juan, I believe. Mm-hmm. And Felipe, of course, worked at Channel 4, and I think now he's on BAI. And at some point, Pablo and Felipe had something to do with The Last Poets, I think?
No, not Pablo. Felipe was one of the founding Last Poets.
He was the Last Poet.
Felipe and Valentin and David.
Okay.
And
were they part of the Young Lords also?
No.
Okay.
No.
That was a separate.
Cain is a visionary.
Oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt. So you come back to New York, and now you are all Young Lords. And so what's your mission? What do you do?
Well, we were immediately allied with, and that's why this Rainbow Coalition film is so important, because we had very strong ties with the Black Panther Party. We did free breakfast programs, free clothing drives, free health clinics. We organized together the Bronx Housing Coalition, and then later for the People's Health Revolutionary Unity Movement, which we took over Lincoln Hospital. But we also extended the idea of the coalition into working with Iwokum, which was Most Righteous Harmonious Fifth, which was a Chinese organization. And then later we reached out, we had contacts with upstate, with Akwesasne Notes,
What's
which
that?
was Mohawk
Okay.
organization. This was little before the founding of AIM, which later.
American Indian Movement.
Yeah, that came a little bit later. So and then we had incredible support. Our nurturing mother was Yuri Kochiyama, in whose arms Malcolm X died, and Yuri was interned in an American concentration camp as a Japanese American, and she lived in Harlem on 125th Street.
So all of your initial work was geared towards coalition building.
Mm-hmm. We took that example that came from Chairman Fred, and I think that you really have to understand that his assassination was not just assassinating Fred Hampton, it was killing the idea of any organization, one that could be vanguarded by a black organization, and then white people and different other kinds of people following that, because the film doesn't show the impact of groups like the National Committee to Combat Fascism, which were like white panther offices all around the country and whatever. It had a powerful impact, and that was a no-no for J. Edgar and Company.
That, we all know about the murder of Fred Hampton and Mark, but I never knew how involved they were in reaching beyond quote-unquote black communities.
Yeah, they don't talk about it. Nobody tells you
That's-
about Preacher Man, Turco, the rest of the folks from the Young Patriots or the Patriot Party. They don't tell you about, we had, the Red Army movement out on the West Coast, and you had the Brown Berets. There was some relationship to some of the Corky Gonzalez and people in La Raza, but that was a little iffy because they were very, very nationalist. But we had Los Siete de La Raza from California, like I said, and the Brown Berets. So you had these connections, and that was the last thing in the world J. Edgar and Company wanted to see happening, was people coming together. And every move that is made is always about how to divide us, how to separate us. And then, of course, you had internal issues that had to be dealt with too. For example, women's issues.
The machismo.
Oh yeah. And the Young Lords program had said, talks about revolutionary machismo. And we were like, the sisters got together and said, excuse me, that is an oxymoron. There is no way in hell that machismo could ever be revolutionary. So we kind of took over things and went on strike and pulled a Lysistrata, and then we demoted the entire male section.
You want to explain the Lysistrata?
No.
But because I've seen that word somewhere, and
Yes,
so y'all go look it up. Okay,
fine. It worked.
It worked. How long did that go on? I'm just curious.
Long enough.
More than a night.
Oh yeah.
Well, you guys were serious.
Yes, we were.
Mm-hmm.
And but actually, some of the younger brothers in the organization sided with the women. They were like 15 and 16, and we were old. We were like 20 and 21. And they thought of us like as aunties, or big sisters. So they sided with the sisters in the organization and not the older brothers. And that's how we devoted the entire Central Committee until they would relearn themselves away from their machismo.
Mm-hmm. At the height, how many members would you say there were involved in the East Coast branch of the Young Lords?
I don't know, because we had offices we started in Chicago, and then we opened in the Bronx and the Lower East Side. Then we opened 3 offices in Jersey. Then we had New Haven, the Philly branch. It was, I can't give you a head count, but we were fairly large in terms of East Coast, because obviously the Panthers were enormous because they were national. but we were doing pretty well.
What was the takeover of an East Harlem? What East Harlem church was it, and why was
First
it?
Spanish Methodist Church, which, by the way, has now a wonderful reverend. She is a liberation theologist. She is truly making it the people's church, and which is a big switch from when the first Spanish Methodist Church at the time. We wanted space for our free breakfast programs and other programs, and the Catholic Church in the area was full. And we approached this church that was huge, had a big gym, and it was empty 6 days a week. But the reverend was a right-wing Cuban gusano who had said that the people in East Harlem were all drug addicts, prostitutas, Satanás. You said Satanás, you know, children of Satan. But we had a couple of people in the organization who had been Pentecostal, and also Pedro Pietri, the poet's family, attended that church. So we started going to church every Sunday to try to, you know, schmooze with the congregation and get that happening. And some of the young people accepted us, but the older people in the church were like freaked out. So one Sunday, it was Testimonial Sunday, and we went to the church again. Felipe stood up to give a speech to testify, and New York City cops and the Red Squad were in the church, and the congregation got up and started screaming, "Armed Christian soldiers," and a lady hit police over the head with a candelabra, and the police came, and us sisters jumped on the cops' backs and bit their ears and stuff like that. Whatever. And it was really a shock, I think, because nobody ever expected people to be beaten and clubbed in a church, in the sanctuary. They didn't wait to whip us, you know, drag you out and then beat you. We were being beaten in the church.
Because you were speaking.
Because Felipe got up to speak, and it was Testimonial Sunday.
And so when he got up to speak, that's when
The cops rushed, they were already in the church.
So the minister had called the cops.
And, yeah, Reverend Calazan, I'll never forget him.
But so tell me about the
13 of us were
takeover.
busted.
So you were busted, but then tell me about the takeover of the church.
So.
Was this
then-
afterwards?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
after, it was in response. And, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came out, and the church was taken over, and we had free breakfast program, free health clinic, all the activities, and, you
After
know.
the Chicago model and the Black Panther model.
Yeah, in the church, and I think it was 13 days. I couldn't go in because we had I had 7 felony counts. All of us that got busted got hit with a slew of felonies.
Who paid your legal expenses?
Our nice friends who were older, leftist, communist types like my dad and his friends. They raised money. Actually, my father showed up and almost got arrested because he called the judge a pig. And we had free legal help from the law community.
And who provided the funds for the breakfast and all of the programs that you were providing for the children?
Oh, well, the food for the free breakfast program was donated from local supermarkets mostly. You know, those big chains that come in and exploit the neighborhood. Well, we suggested very strongly that they should donate money, food for the free breakfast program. And
you made a request that he could refuse.
that's right. And they gave food. We didn't go after the little bodega people. We went after A&P and stuff like that. So they gave us crates of stuff.
And how did it end, the church occupation? I should say utilization.
The police came and arrested everybody and took them out, and it's in the movie about Palante, Siempre Palante film. You can see people being loaded into buses and taken out of the church. But we went back a second time. We took it over after the death of Julio Rondon in the tombs. We took over the church.
Who was Julio?
A member of the Young Lords.
And why was he arrested?
Well, Lords got arrested almost every day. The cops were hassling him. You'd be selling the paper, doing whatever, and you'd end up being busted.
Now you worked on the paper, Adelante?
Palante.
Palante. And that was one of your sources of revenue?
That was the main source of revenue.
But it was mostly communication though, right? Spreading the word out,
Yeah, but it was also, that's how the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords Party and a number of other organizations, because Muslims have Muhammad's Peace, everybody took a corner. You go around 25th Street and Panthers be on this corner, and the Young Lords be on that, and the Muslims are across the street. The only ones we ran out of Harlem was RU, Revolutionary Union. They were like out to lunch like this. So they showed up in Harlem and we said goodbye, and they had to leave. I won't tell you what we did, but yes.
Well, I gathered that you weren't gonna tell me, that's why I didn't ask you. I'm getting some hints here, you know, 13-point platform, was
13, because the Panthers was 10, but we added additional things because we also had to deal with the status of Puerto Rico and independence for Puerto Rico, so we expanded it. Other groups did the same thing because like Third World Gay Revolution, many of you may know about Stonewall. Sylvia Rivera was a community worker for the Young Lords. I went with Sylvia to her first Third World Gay Revolution meeting down at the firehouse.
I want to leave some time available for our audience to ask some questions, and I'm sure a lot of people who have questions and comments. But let's talk just for a little bit about the movie, the documentary that we just saw. One of the things that was striking, the Confederate flag, the Confederate battle flag, which, you know, rips at me because I'm from Mississippi and it's still in our state flag. There was a vote and it didn't work. Anyway, somehow the Young Lords in Chicago managed to tolerate that in order to embrace or encourage the young patriots.
Well, that would have been, it would be the Panthers tolerating.
Oh, the Panthers?
Yeah, because the Lords really didn't have, in Chicago, didn't really have that much grounding in, I'd say, historical black issues, because they were mostly focused on both the neighborhood and then the island of Puerto Rico,
Okay.
and the Confederate flag really doesn't enter into things.
So it was the Panthers,
So it was the Panther, and there were some Panthers who were not happy campers.
as Bobby Lee said.
Yeah, and Bobby said that. But for the most part, if you had ever met Preachman and Turco, there were a number of the leaders of the Patriot Party. They were down, you know, and I learned that it's not Appalachia, you know, it was Appalachia. And so the idea at the time, the acute poverty, I mean, Chicago is racist. And I know a lot about Chicago because my dad grew up there. We have a lot of family, friends, and whatever. We go to Chicago, and you literally, you know, had lines that you just didn't cross over. You were walking into somebody else's neighborhood. And the way that the politics of Chicago, the ward bosses and whatever, like my grandparents were Republicans, because at that point in time, black folks were Republicans.
Yeah, Lincoln. Yeah.
And are you Lincoln? You know, my grandfather was a race man. So, and my grandmother was a blockbuster. She would buy houses in the right neighborhood and sell it. In fact, Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine Hansberry modeled that blockbuster busting about my grandmother, change the character.
Wow.
And, so that's an interesting history too.
So let me just be more pointed about the question. Is it, when you looked at what just happened in Richmond, you know, the march of the long guns, or the horror that happened in Charlottesville, people are upset, people are angry, people are alienated from the government, but somehow there does not seem to be a possibility of any kind of meeting on a point of common agreement.
Well, not with those folks.
Not with the, back then, but I mean now.
No, but I'm saying
Oh, you mean with those old-
not with those folks, because I have been, down to spend time with Reverend Barber
In North Carolina.
and have marched with Moral Mondays, and the spectrum of groups that are involved in the Forward Together Moral Monday movement are all colors of the rainbow, are covering multiple issues, and not just this strict sort of class-based analysis, blah, blah, whatever, but intersectional kind of movement that's coming together that takes in economic justice, reproductive justice, climate justice, and all kinds of the LGBTQ and inquiring issues. And it was, and you don't even get the kind of coverage. The first time I went down to Moral Mondays was a couple of years ago. There were 80,000 people march. And do you think that it was a headline anywhere? They don't want you to know about coalitions. And they will keep you, like they kill Fred and Mark and folks to get rid of the coalitions. And every time they form, they stifle even the information about these things. And we've got Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of this, but it's still not enough.
You have mentioned in a talk that I heard you give that Reverend Barber, in your estimation, is a more, well, you tell me how he compares to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
Closer to Malcolm X.
What is it about him? What impressed you the first time you heard him? Because you talk about hearing him and not really knowing who you were listening to, and you were going back on your...
I actually was walking past my computer, and I had the NAACP convention in Houston. It was live streaming, and they had invited Mitt Romney had come here to speak to the NAACP, and the NAACP ladies were sitting there wearing with their little church hats on, you know, very polite, you know, because you don't boo somebody at an NAACP convention. And Romney left, and they had to find somebody to speak after Romney. Reverend Barber was not scheduled.
Oh.
I found out that later, inter-NAACP crowd. And he was the one to speak. I had no idea who this man was. And I heard this voice, and I walked back and stood at my computer. Then my husband came in, and he was like, "Who the hell is that?" I said, "I don't know."
What was he saying? The gist.
Asked me. He was just talking about power and rising up and coming together, but it was his prophetic. He kind of reminded me, you know how Barbara Jordan sounded like God?
Yeah, yes.
Well, Reverend Barber did too. So the hair was standing up on my arms, and then people were jumping up. You know, all the church ladies who are normally very polite, they were screaming and whooping and hollering. And I had to go back and find the live stream and get back to find out who is this man. And Reverend William Barber. So I started following him, and then I found some friends of mine in North Carolina told me they knew who he was. Then I found out that he worked with two of the oldest white activists from the movement who were both in SNCC up until the time that SNCC asked white folks to leave. But they have been activists for a long time, and they're Southern activists, Southern organizers, not from the North going South. So Alex Shirley is one of them, whose name most people don't know, but he's amazing. He and his wife were firebombed. They almost died when they were organizing. They come out of that whole movement, or white folks organizing for white folks. So connecting with Reverend Barber, going down there and seeing the strength of what was being built, I came back and I would say to people, have you heard of Reverend Barber? They would be like, who? And then so many of my friends are atheists, but they're annoying atheists. And I have no problem with atheism, but people who are militantly atheists who go, I am going to deal with the flying spaghetti monster. And I keep saying, you are not going to be able to organize anybody in my community if you run around calling people's God the spaghetti monster. You know, that is not good organizing.
So you don't watch Bill Maher, huh? I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
Please, we will not go there. The thing is you have to, we learned in the party, both parties, that you meet people where they're at. And Fred had the incredible ability to be open to so many people, to not freak out, to understand. He would have never gotten up and cursed out somebody's God, because he knew everybody going to church, you know. And I got into an argument. Cornel West said he enjoyed the Panther Party because, you know, because he's from Sacramento. Because they were anti-religion, so he went to divinity school. Now that was a big lie, because the breakfast programs, Reverend O'Neill, all of the Panther programs operated out of churches. I just think that Cornell was kind of cowardly. No, I mean, he's a great intellectual, but he would have not made a good Panther.
Okay. Well, it's First Amendment here, and we're good with it. The minister and his wife who were killed. Did you know that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But
And that's another seldom told story.
That's an untold story. The story also of how a group of white folks broke into the FBI building and got the paperwork that proves that Fred Hampton, and they've never been caught, that proved that Fred Hampton was assassinated and it was a conspiracy. So there's a whole history that people still don't really know about what happened. And though Jesse is in the film, you know, it wasn't until many years later that he founded Rainbow Push and then announced the Rainbow Coalition. And what I have said to people is, Fred said, I am a revolutionary. Jesse said, I am somebody. And there is a difference, you know. So unfortunately, you say Rainbow Coalition to people and they only think of Jesse Jackson. And which is why I'm really happy that the film was named First Rainbow Coalition, because it emphasizes what was there. And we've had other rainbows, because we now think of the rainbow flag for those of us who are parts of the LGBT community.
You know, what's the saying about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery? And when I did, how many, just by show of hands, how many of you here knew about the First Rainbow Coalition? Just show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, some people, but most of you had not. Most of us only knew about the Rainbow Coalition that Jackson founded, but obviously he took it from the first one.
Oh yeah, because he knew Fred, and everybody in Chicago knew about the Rainbow Coalition. So I'm glad I just wish that there were more references back that the connective tissue wasn't lost, because it very clearly, that history has been erased or suppressed in many ways.
My final question, and then the floor will open, and kind of go, so can you talk about politics just for a second? Just for, I mean, like today, I mean, like that kabuki show going on, in Washington now? I shouldn't call it that, that's not nice. What's your perspective on how we Americans all should proceed towards November?
I'll get arrested if I tell you what I think should happen.
Please don't get arrested.
So, I will not say that. Get rid of that orange maniac lunatic and all of his enabler buddies and whatever. We need to take back the Senate. We need to do what's got to be done. I get into fights with some of my former students and young people because they try to tell me, oh, it's not worth it, voting is terrible. PANTH Party always supported doing both. You fight from the outside, but you also deal with electoral politics. And young people who tell me, hey, it's not about voting. I got into a big fight about Copernic. Because you can take all the knees you want, and I'll back you, brother, but don't tell people not to vote. Because I live by what I learned from Fannie Lou Hamer, period.
Okay, anyone? Yes, sir.